The latest news, national issues, the political scene, and conversations with prominent personalities. All these firsthand at the forefront. Good morning. I am Attorney Karen Jimeno. Executive Order Number 81, signed on December 30, 2024, reorganized the composition of the National Security Council. It effectively removed Vice President Sara Duterte and former Presidents Rodrigo Duterte, Joseph Estrada, and Gloria Macapagal-Arroyo as members of the council. President Bongbong Marcos stressed the need to revamp the NSC to ensure its capability of handling evolving security and sovereignty issues. Is the NSC shakeup a move to address a threat, or is it caused by politics? Joining us live at the BNC studio is former Chief Presidential Legal Counsel of former President Duterte, Attorney Salvador Panelo. Good morning, Attorney Sal.
Good morning, Karen.
And welcome back at the forefront.
Thank you.
So let's first start with Executive Order 81. Do you believe it's claimed that it is meant to reorganize and revamp the National Security Council?
It's pure and simple politics, dirty politics of that. Because if you look at the history of the National Security Council, for 75 years, the composition remained constant. The Vice President was there. And for 27 years, all living presidents were also members of the National Security Council. And then suddenly, this so-called reorganization, executive order. So what's the reason for that? There is only one reason: politics. They want them out, the two Dutertes. It's all geared towards 2028. Now, the two other living presidents were included to deodorize, para hindi halata. To make it appear na they're not targeting VP Sara as well as the former President Duterte.
And former President Arroyo, in the early parts of after President Bongbong Marcos won the elections, was demoted at some point from being Deputy Speaker to just, I think, from being a Deputy Majority.
Senior Deputy.
Senior Deputy there to just Deputy, and then later on just ordinary Congresswoman. Do you think that this also has something to do with former President Arroyo not being an ally of the administration?
Oh, definitely. We know for a fact that the former President Arroyo is close political ally of VP Sara.
Does she remain to be an ally of
is.
Vice President
Definitely,
Sara up to now?
Until now, yes.
But according to the records, the NSC met for the first time in February 2023 and has not met since then. So Vice President Sara Duterte, according to the records, did not attend that NSC meeting. So do you think
Was she invited? Or was she not?
As early as that time, was there already a rift that would cause the Vice President to not be invited in the National Security Council?
I don't know that particular month. What I know is that even the previous Vice President, despite the fact that they were not politically allied, she was invited and attended the July 2016 National Security Council with the presence of 4 living presidents: Arroyo, Estrada, Ramos, and there were 4 of them, and Aquino.
So it's really part of tradition to have former presidents be part of the National Security Council, regardless of the alliance between the shifting administrations.
Not only tradition, it's part of the executive order created originally. That was the base for that was Commonwealth Act 330. And Quirino, in 1952, created the National Security Council. And then in 1986, President Cory reestablished that National Security Council with the same composition, members of the cabinet, vice president, and other persons designated by her. And then it was incorporated in the Administrative Code of 1987. In 1992, the former President Arroyo reestablished it. And again, the Vice President was included, as well as the living president.
So in your opinion, as a lawyer, this Executive Order 81, is there any flaw from a constitutional standpoint to the way it was reorganized to remove former presidents as members of the council?
There is no dispute or quarrel about the president has the discretion, because that's
his
an
prerogative.
executive order. It is his right. The problem is, to my mind, it was ill-advised, because you need the insights of the vice president, you need the insights of the living presidents. They are well-equipped, they have experience, they know their subject. Eh, bakit mo tatanggalin? Yung sinasabi nila, I'm amused by the rationale of this one cabinet member saying that we're doing this because we want to
Revamp?
Revamp. No, they're revamping it because they want to put more strength in the composition. And they said, and he was saying that we've been reorganizing this. He's forgetting that, yes, that has been reorganized, but they never removed the vice president and the living presidents.
Well, it was Executive Secretary Lucas Bersamin that also said that Vice President Sara is no longer relevant to the responsibilities of an NSC member.
Eh, bakit naman? But he did explain why. Why can't she not be relevant? She is the second highest official of the land. At any time she succeeds to the presidency, she has to be there. She needs to be there.
So in the past, when you were Chief Presidential Legal Counsel, what did you see were some of the relevant roles of the NSC when it comes to national security?
You need people who have wisdom, experience relative to national security. And these people, members of the cabinet and other high-profile personalities that the president trusts to have such wisdom, are invited. Kailangan nila yun eh.
But
They need it.
what about the threat that Vice President Sara made against President Bongbong Marcos, First Lady Lisa, and Speaker Martin Romualdez, the threat from the grave, meaning if something happened to her that she already talked to an assassin, do you consider that to be a threat to national security, which could be a consideration as to why she was removed from the council?
If you say, Karen, that it's a threat from the grave, so there was no threat. How can you make a threat inside the grave? That was never a threat. I have already explained that many times over. It was a conditional threat, if it could be called a threat. I think you should take it in context. The vice president knew that there was a threat in her life. And she believed that the only people that could do that to end her life would be her political enemies.
So considering that there is that rift where even the vice president would consider the president as her political enemy, you don't think that there's a reason for her removal in the National Security Council on that ground where there's no, basically there's this conflict between the two?
National security should always go beyond the personal differences of the members of the National Security Council, because you're talking about the security of your country. Whether I don't like you, you don't like me, we have to be together and plan to secure our country from forces external or internal that wants to overthrow or destroy our land.
And what about former President Duterte making calls to the military to withdraw their support? I think there were statements by former President Duterte before saying that they should withdraw their support, their military support to President Bongbong Marcos. Do you consider this to be a potential threat to national security? Or would this fall under any offense under the revised penal code,
For
like
one,
inciting to sedition?
For one, Karen, it is predicated on the wrong premise. He never asked the military to withdraw support. In fact, he was saying that I do not like coup. Ayaw ko yan. I don't want bloody. What he was asking the military is to be realistic, as well as they should know exactly their duty under the Constitution, which is very clearly provided that they are the protector of the people. So if that is your duty, you have to see whether your country is under threat, even by its own government. And if that is so, then it is your duty to protect the people from this government created by the same people.
So there was no call for withdrawal
Definitely
of military
not.
support.
In fact, he was the one stopping the military from doing it.
And in your opinion, so you said that here, former President Estrada and former President Arroyo were just collateral damage to desensitize
Yes,
the removal of the
to
Dutertes.
deodorize.
To
the purging
deodorize.
of the two father and son tandem, father and daughter tandem.
Based on this reorganization, who do you think would be replacing those former presidents and the vice president in terms of the NSC membership? Because you suddenly have, like 4 people gone from the NSC?
Well, I saw the list. They have put in chairman even of committees in Congress, in the Senate, as well as in the House. Committee chairman. Nandun sila lahat eh. Yung mga anti-Duterte lahat. It's a good thing.
You mean members of Congress?
Yeah.
Is that usual, considering that this should be an executive council, meaning people from the executive?
But akin okay lang yun. Kasi security ang pinag-uusapan. If you're talking of security, yung mga pinagkakatiwala mo, those who you trust and those who have the wisdom to share with you on the security planning, kailangan sama mo yan. Pero this time, talagang sinama nila lahat yung mga anti-Duterte forces doon.
And some are speculating that the reason why former President Duterte was also removed from the council was because President Bongbong Marcos was not invited to the inauguration of President Trump, whereas former President Duterte was invited to the inauguration of Trump. Would you know if former President Duterte was really invited to Trump's inauguration this January?
No, I don't think he was invited.
So it's nothing like a personal
I think
reason.
That's a petty reason.
Okay. And what's your take on calls to abolish the
Congress?
NTF-LCAC? NTF-LCAC. May calls ba to abolish Congress? So we'll talk about that as a separate question.
I'm calling for that.
Your call. Ikaw yung...
Revolutionary
Ikaw
government.
pala yun. Okay. But what about calls to abolish NTF-LCAC? Do you think this has anything to do with also the removal of
Who's making the
Vice
call,
President Sara?
by the way?
Well, this is based on reports that there are some calls to abolish NTF-LCAC, and some are saying that this is related to this unholy alliance between the administration and the left groups, including the party lists from the left.
The NTF-LCAC is very effective in dismantling the communist apparatus. So it should not
And
be
this was
abolished.
established during the time of President Duterte,
and it
right?
was continued by, and to his credit, he continued with the NTF-LCAC.
Yes. But do you think this has anything to do with potentially abolishing that NTF-LCAC with this new composition of the NSC?
I don't think so. I think that would be another ill advice if he removes or abolishes it.
So this reorganization, in your opinion, is really purely political or dirty politics, as you mentioned.
Oh, yes.
But do you think that this would affect the chances of the Duterte allies from being re-elected in the upcoming elections or even at the local positions, that those who support former President Duterte or Vice President Sara would be affected in terms of their ability to be elected in the upcoming elections?
To my mind, it has nothing to do. Election of the
So the timing is not really...
election of the members of Congress, senators, has definitely nothing to do with that. The election, the outcome of the election will depend on the candidates' organization, their name recall, their face recall, and the money.
Even at the local level?
Yes, because I've been advocating for education of the electorate. Because right now, majority of the voters are not formally educated. That's why they are vulnerable to many factors. They can be bribed, they can be easily influenced, pwede silang maswindle, mabola. Kaya look at the kind of people we are electing. But if you are educated, you have a college degree, I don't think you'll be vote for this kind of people.
Well, based on recent surveys, two of former president's allies have a chance of getting seats in Senate.
Yes.
But they're not rating as highly formerly when President Duterte was still president, when he was endorsing, or even in the 2022 elections when he was finishing his term as president. I think we have here one of the surveys where we can see that Senator Bato de la Rosa is on the borderline, and Bongo is up there high. But do you think that the endorsing power of former President Duterte is waning given the current political landscape?
No, it's not, it doesn't, I don't think the endorsement has something to do with it. Maybe a little, but again, I will repeat, the factors would be money, your organization, and your name recall and face recall. You must remember that there are so many re-electionists and those who want to get back, to go back to the Senate. Eh, dati nang kilala ito. They have already organizations. Samantalang yung mga ini-endorse ni Presidente, wala. Relatively unknown. There are only two in the, what you may call an opposition, that has the capacity to win. Who? Chavit Singson.
Do you think Chavit Singson
He has the money, he has the name recall, he has the face recall, and he has the organization. If he uses his money, he will win. And then you have Pastor Apollo Kibuloy. He too has those assets, money, name recall, face recall, and organization. Ito, dalawang ito pwede yan, if they know how to.
And are they considered allies of the president, you think?
Oh, definitely. Of the former president.
Of former President Duterte, yes. And based on the political landscape right now, do you see that there are any other reorganizations that may happen in the government? So right now you have NSC, but do you think there are any other potential reorganizations based on your experience as Chief Presidential Legal Counsel?
Well, none that I know of. What is dangerous? We might have a reorganization of governments.
On what basis?
Well, we have the huge rally in January 13. Many
That
people,
was called for by the Iglesia ni Cristo.
which I'm supporting because the call is very sensible. Because the President, Marcos Jr., has called out to stop the impeachment because if, according to him, and he is very correct, it will not benefit any Filipino. That's why the Iglesia ni Cristo is calling to support the President's call. And we support
Former
that.
President Duterte's call, or current President Marcos's
So
call.
all of us are supporting that because impeachment is such a divisive process that will only create schism among us. So, tigilan nila yan.
So can you clarify, the call of INC to stop the impeachment is to support President Marcos's call,
Yes.
not to have impeachment? Okay. So it's not former President Duterte's call to stop the impeachment.
No.
So it's really
The rally is in support of Marcos' call to stop the impeachment. It effectively, of course, supports Vice Presidente Sara.
Yes. But in your opinion, as a lawyer, do you think there's really time to even hear the impeachment case? There's rumors that there's going to be a fourth impeachment that will be filed soon. But is there enough time for Congress, one, to examine the impeachment complaints and then for this to go to Senate?
Congress can always do what it wants to do. They have the power. They have the resources. But even assuming that impeachment will not push through, the mere fact of filing such impeachment is already an effective black propaganda tool against the Vice President. Sinira mo na siya.
Do you think it's effective in this case? Kasi
Diba?
Pinoy is also like underdogs, so
Yeah, but
feeling nila inaape, baka the sympathy would also
if
go to
we
the
will look
Vice
at the
President.
survey, tinatamaan siya. Both of them. Both of them.
Both the
Parehong
President and the
bumababa
Vice
eh.
President.
Talagang naapektuhan sila para-pareho.
But should this go to Senate, do you think Vice President Sara will finish the trial or is resignation an option?
I don't think resignation is an option. The question would be, will she be convicted, assuming that tuloy-tuloy nila yan? Sinasabi nila, mahirap because of the senators. I'm always thinking of the Corona impeachment. Di ba you're part of that?
Yes,
Oh.
I was in the defense.
Tignan mo, impeachment wala namang basis yun. Pero suddenly na-convict
Yeah.
because of, according to one senator, they were given the wherewithal.
Well, if you look at the timing of all the events, the budget for 2025 was just passed recently, and it was controversial. I think there are some party-less groups that are still opposing the approval of the budget because of several questionable items. Do you think that some of the items there will be used for the 2025 elections and also for a potential impeachment to get the sufficient votes in Congress and in Senate?
Definitely. Yun lang akap eh. That's good for the election, di ba? How much? The members of Congress will receive 26 billion and then the senators 6 billion. Malaking pera yun for election purposes.
So when you say that kanina, the factors that would affect the elections, yung money,
Oh yes.
do you think
that-
manggagaling yan sa...
Yes, dun yung...
Okay, but Secretary Sal, what would you say is that when you say that the removal of VP Sara and the other former presidents was ill-advised, so going back to the National Security Council, the former President Duterte and Vice President Sara have also been perceived as favoring China or allies of China. And Philippines, one of our perennial issues in the past years is really this territorial dispute with China. Do you think that was also a consideration in terms of this new composition of the National Security
Well,
Council?
if that was the perception of the present dispensation, that will be part of it. But it's not true that they are pro-China. The very reason why President Duterte befriended China was because he could not enforce the arbitral ruling. And nobody in this world has the might to enforce it. No country wants to enforce it. So sabi ni Presidente Duterte, since we cannot enforce this, kaibiganin na lang natin because the West Philippine Sea is not the end all and be all of this problem, of our relationship. There are so many aspects of human endeavor that we can use, like trade relations with them. the sharing of intelligence. Ang daming pwede, kaya doon siya nag-concentrate.
Okay. And in the past, with the former NSC, wala bang instances where the president did not approve of or rejected advice that would beef up our opposition to China's aggression in the West Philippine Sea?
I'm not privy to the to the thinking of the president nor with his advisors, Nicola.
So right now, with Vice President Sara no longer being a cabinet member in terms of having a position in the Department of Education and no longer being part of the National Security Council, where do you think should she concentrate her efforts on as a vice president to be relevant to the country?
Well, right now she's still relevant because she established many offices of the vice president so that people will have access to her office. Those who are having difficulty getting into departments that provide services, nandun siya.
And you think the budget issue is not a problem, considering her budget, at least what she asked for, was not fully given?
Well, as she said, I can go without. Di ba?
And politically, in 2028, do you think that Vice President Sara will run for president?
If they do not disqualify her, if they do not convict her, definitely, it's game over.
You think she has a good chance of winning?
Not only game over nga eh.
In your opinion? I saw the recent presidential surveys, the one that came out in December, and currently Vice President Sara is tied with Senator Raffy Tulfo in terms of
Malaya.
having preferential votes potentially as a 2028 presidential candidate. So you think malayo na si Vice President Sara?
Malayo ang tingin. Look at, tinan mo yung previous senatorial elections. Ang number one sa survey, si Raffy. Diba? Robin Padilla, nandun sa huling-huli. Nobody even believed that he would win. And I was telling him, you will top the senatorial polls. Talo mo kami lahat. Kasi ang hindi nakikita ng tao sa'yo, yung mga kumukonta sa'yo. One, you have the common sense. Number two, you're honest. You have the charisma. And you're very humble. Plus the fact you're not corrupt. Maniwala ka, you're number one. When the election results came, yung number one, wala siyang sinabi. Because Robin got 28 million votes. Halos malapit na kila Presidente Marcos Jr. kay Inday Sara. Pero si Raffy, 5 million votes ang layo niya kay Robin. Kung 5 million ang layo niya kay Robin, gaano ba kalayo ang boto niya kay Inday Sara? Di 7+.
But do you think that also at that time, well, Robin, apart from being an actor, very well known all over the Philippines, also benefited from the former President Duterte at the time when he was finishing his term, had very high approval ratings and had really high endorsing power as well?
Hindi rin eh. You know why? Kasi that was ending of his term. Alam mo, if you're running in the midterms, ang endorsement ng presidente napakalakas. You know why? Because the president will have 3 years more. In control siya. So all the mayors, the governors, all the local government officials will toe the line. Pag sinabi niya, tulungan mo yan. May problema ka sa akin pag hindi. Midterm yon. Nung tumakbo si Robin, end of President Duterte na yun.
Pero ang taas pa rin ng approval rating ni
kahit pa
President
mataas.
Duterte at that time.
Pero,
I think he broke a record by ending with 80+%.
Hindi ka susundin pag kahit na presidente ka. It happened to me.
Because he also
It
endorsed you.
happened to me. Hindi lang siya nag-endorse sa akin, pati si Presidente Arroyo. Dinala ko sa lahat ng mga bayan.
Pero hindi ka naman actor.
Exactly.
Joking, but yeah.
Yun nga
So that's
sinasabi ko.
the name
The
recognition
name recall,
din.
the face recall, the organization, and the money. Yung money, wala siya noon. But you know, just like Duterte, when he ran, he had no money. Pag gusto ka ng tao, talagang they will spend for you.
And do you think that still applies with Vice President Sara after having undergone all of the events last year where there was a budget hearing both for DepEd and OVP regarding the confidential funds, and now all of these impeachment complaints? Do you think she will come out unscathed by all of these issues?
She will survive and she will win the presidency on the assumption that she is not disqualified by reason of conviction in the impeachment trial.
And you think resignation is still out of the table? Because
I
that
don't
seems to
think-
be a more sensible strategy. She can resign and not be disqualified.
No, I don't think she will. Palaban nito eh. Hindi ito umuurong sa labanan. Sabi nga eh, hindi pa sila nakakahanap ng kalaban na kagaya ko. I agree.
And former President Duterte will be part of her legal team
Oh,
should
yes,
this impeachment
definitely.
trial push
Yes.
through. And then, Attorney Sal, lastly, in the past, people were also expecting one of the members of the Duterte family, one of the sons, to
Yeah.
also run for Senate in 2025. What changed?
Wala naman, haka-haka lang yun eh.
Hindi talaga sa
That was
kanila
only speculation.
Okay, so there was really no
Speculation lang yun.
intention to run
Wala.
for Senate. But in 2028, would they consider running for national office?
Hindi ko alam. We'll have to ask them. But I've been pushing the former president to run in tandem with the daughter. Di ba? Ako ang original yan eh, yung Duterte during the 2021 elections. Had they run, tapos na sana yun. Walang problema ganito.
Where do you see this going? So, with January, the INC rally, will former President Duterte be joining that rally as well?
I haven't asked him about it. I haven't talked to him since I arrived.
But you will be joining it.
Oh, definitely. I've been endorsing it and I've been asking the people to support it because you're supporting effectively the President, Marcos Jr., in calling for the stoppage of the impeachment. As well, you're also supporting Inday Sara.
Thank you so much, Secretary Sal Panelo. It was nice to have you back here again.
Oo nga, wala tayong commercial break ha.
Oh, maraming tanong eh. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Up next, we will have the Assistant Director General of the National Security Council when At the Forefront returns after a short break.
A sports psychologist. I used to have one.
That is so important.
Yes, it's so important. Honestly, I feel like people call me crazy if I do it.
There's
but
no shame in that.
it helps. I've been doing it for so long. My mom's a psychologist, so I grew up with a psychologist in the house. And then maybe when I got to a little bit competitive stage na national team, I got a psychologist again just to talk about how it feels like being an athlete in general, like
That is
growing up.
amazing.
Yeah.
How has that helped you specifically, getting a sports psychology? Because honestly, I feel like that's a very undermined aspect of being an
Yeah.
athlete, diba?
Because they help you a lot with the mentality. Yung fact lang na, when you talk to yourself so negatively, that already affects a lot of things
Right.
in your mind, your body. Then it can help a lot with your game also.
Very nice. Denny's looking very smart. Hello, Denny.
He's woken up specially for
Hello.
you.
Find a special place.
Go for this one here. You've been a good
I
girl.
have been very good actually, very good. So, very happy Christmas and happy. Thank you.
Ciao, mabuhay. You are watching The Word Exposed.
Prepare our hearts as we dive deeper into our faith and receive the strength from God's Word. Join Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle as he shares the reflection we need for the rest of the week.
We pray that the Word of God would find fulfillment in your life and His blessings be always upon you.
Every Sunday, 7 a.m. with replays at 3 p.m.
Welcome back at the forefront. We now have with us the Assistant Director General of the National Security Council, Undersecretary Jonathan Malaya. Good morning, USEC Jonathan.
Yes, good morning, Atty. Karen. Thanks for having me in your show.
Well, right now, the news is about the reorganization of the National Security Council through Executive Order 81.
That's right, yeah.
What is the first mandate of the National Security Council?
Well, the National Security Council is essentially an advisory body to the President. It was created in 1950. Luma na po ito, no? It's not a new organization by President Elpidio Quirino. And it's really a body which gives advice, as I said, to the President on anything that relates to national security. So when you talk about national security, that's not just defense or sovereignty. It also concerns food security, for example, health security, and essentially the well-being of the Filipino people.
And who determines the membership? Is there any clear criteria as to who should be the members?
Well, it's been changing through time, no? It has undergone several reorganizations. The first one, if I remember correctly, was under the former President Marcos, the old man. And then it was reorganized under President Cory 2 times, President Fidel Ramos, and then President several other presidents, no? So it's always been reorganized based on the needs of the president and to be able to give the necessary information, accurate information to the president.
And are other departments also entitled to a seat there based on current administration or like the current composition of the NSC? Because I remember when I was Undersecretary for the Department of Public Works, I attended some National Security
Yes.
Council meetings. I had a seat there
Yes.
on behalf of the DPWH because of just the composition at that time. So currently, are there still departments that have seats in the NSC?
Yes, the usual suspects are there, no? The DFA, the DND, of course, the National Security Advisor. But it really depends on the president. There was a time during the time of President Fidel Ramos that he wanted more the economic team into the National Security Council. So the NEDA was there, the DTI was there. But when President GMA came in, she essentially removed the economic sector from the National Security Council and just left the NEDA there. So it's really a fluctuating membership.
So it really
no?
depends on the style of leadership as well of the incumbent president.
Yes, and based also on his priorities, on his needs, no? Because as I said, it's an advisory body to the president. So it's really about what the president's requirements are. And as you said, it's the difference in leadership styles, the leadership in the priorities of the president. And every now and then, an executive order is issued to change the composition.
So currently, with this reorganization of the National Security Council, what does it look like? And what is your comment on, earlier we had former Chief Presidential Legal Counsel, Secretary Sal Panelo, saying that this smacks of dirty politics. What is your comment on that?
Well, I think Secretary Sal is simply expressing his personal opinion. I think the composition of the National Security Council is really the discretion of the president, and I think the president made a judgment call here. It's his body anyway. He's the chair. He calls for these meetings, and I think there are some reasons, no, behind the president's decision to remove certain individuals from the council itself. Yes.
And is it true that there has only been one meeting since President Marcos took office, that the NSC only met in February 2023?
Well, that meeting wasn't really a full council meeting. It was just, the NSA, National Security Advisor Eduardo Año, has direct access to the president. They meet very regularly on many issues, whether internal or territorial defense or external security. Yes, there was that meeting in February, but that wasn't a council meeting. So we haven't had a full council meeting yet
Never pa.
under this administration.
So perhaps that's why Vice President Sara never got an invitation, because in November last year, Vice President Sara supposedly demanded that the NSC give a reason why she was not receiving any invitations to an NSC meetings. And I suppose the reason was because there were no meetings to speak
Yes,
of.
there were no meetings. There hasn't been a full council meeting called by current President Bongbong Marcos. During the previous administration, there were one or two meetings called by former President Duterte. But under this administration, no full council meetings have yet been called. But I was just told by NSA Año last week that we will now recommend the convening of the National Security Council based on the composition under Executive Order 81.
What's the current composition right now? How does it look like? Are there people from the economic team? Are there any new members that come from agencies that were not included before? Can you give us an idea how this current NSC looks like?
Well, it's essentially the same composition since the Gloria Macapagal administration, the GMA administration. It has a mixture of the executive and the legislative branches of government. So
Is that usual to have members of the legislative in the National Security Council?
Well, if you look at our history, no. When it was first created under President Elpidio Quirino, the membership was purely executive. And then when President Cory and President Fidel Ramos came in, they wanted a fusion of the executive and the legislative branches of government. So you have there the Speaker of the House, the Senate President, the minority leader and the majority leaders of both houses, and select members of Congress, the ones representing the chairmen of the Senate Committee on Defense, Foreign Affairs, the counterparts of the executive departments who are also part and parcel of the NSC since the very beginning.
So how many are the members currently?
I don't.
I'm looking at
I
the
didn't.
list. I think this is the
I didn't
new
really count it.
composition. Yeah.
Yes.
You have the Labor Secretary as well there. And the Chief Presidential Legal Counsel is also there.
Yes.
So yeah, we don't know the total number right now, but it seems like
And it's a fluctuating number because the president also has the authority to add additional members to the council. So it really changes depending on the...
But what is the average number talaga in the past administrations? Would you know how many times a full council meeting is called?
I think around 20.
Around 20 for a term?
20 members
20 members.
who are
Okay.
part of the council.
And what about the frequency of the meetings?
Oh, it really depends on the president itself. Sometimes there has been, because I'm only looking at the records. No, I just joined the NSC under this administration. I wasn't part of the NSC. So before I was with the DILG in the previous administration. So, and as I said, the meetings were more frequent before, but under PRRD there was just one.
And based on the mandate of the NSC, does the NSC also manage security, the national security, when it comes to politically turbulent times? So in this case, the rift we have right now with the president and the vice president, is that considered a security threat that needs to be managed by the NSC?
Yes, anything that poses a threat to the stability of the country, whether political, whether economic, or military, is within the purview of the National Security Council.
What about the statements made by Vice President Sara Duterte last year that she talked to an assassin in case something happened to her? Is that considered a security threat?
Yes, Secretary Eduardo Año stated last year that any threat to the President of the Philippines is a national security concern.
What about the threat to the Vice President? If her statements are correct that she said that there are also threats to her own safety, is that considered a national security threat as well?
Yes, to a certain extent, yes, because the Vice President is the second highest official of the land. Therefore, any threat to the highest officials of the country is a national security concern.
In the past, we had former NSA National Security Advisor Clarita Carlos here at the forefront. And she mentioned, at that time, it was nearing the US elections, and she said that if Trump were to win, there's a possibility that he would charge us for rendering protection based on our issues with the territorial dispute with China. Do you see that as a possibility?
Well, not really. I think what Secretary Clarita Carlos is referring to is the transactional nature of how Trump deals with countries that it protects. No? So, in essence, when he mentioned that the countries that receive that kind of protection, like NATO countries, for example, have to step up and take up a larger share of the cost of maintaining NATO. Or, for example, Ukraine, right? Because of the tremendous amount of billions of dollars that has been given by the U.S. to you for Ukraine defense, and probably Taiwan. But in the case of the Philippines, we don't really have a lot of U.S. presence here.
Yeah.
No? All we have are the EDCA sites. And the EDCA sites do not generate as much cost as the Ukraine war, for example. So, given that the Philippines is at the forefront of countering Chinese expansionism and aggression in the West Philippine Sea, and the relatively small amounts of U.S. investment in our defense, I don't think President Trump would impose that kind of transactional cost to the Philippines.
Okay, so there's really no basis for them to charge us anything.
In our opinion, in my opinion, yes, because when we assessed the possible policy of President Trump towards the Philippines, our assessment is that there will be no major change. Maybe some minor changes, but I think the United States will continue to support us in many aspects because we are a treaty partner, the oldest treaty partner, in fact, in Asia.
So there are currently no discussions on revising any of our arrangements relating to the EDCA sites?
No, because the Biden administration is already leaving office. So we'll see once the Trump administration takes over in the next few weeks.
Yes. And can you give us any updates on the situation in Bajo de Masinloc?
Yes, it's in the papers right now, and I just checked before I came in. There's been some concern because the largest Coast Guard vessel of China, CG-5901, was spotted 65 to 70 nautical miles off the coast of Zambales. And we immediately sent the BRP Cabra. No? You know, Attorney Karen, we have already improved our maritime domain awareness. No? When the Russian submarine, we immediately detected it. So we also know where they are. So we immediately sent the BRP Cabra to monitor the movements, essentially to shadow CG-5901. And the Coast Guard challenged its presence. No? The Coast Guard said that it cannot legally conduct law enforcement operations, and it directed CG-5901 to leave the exclusive economic zone of the Philippines. So it's now on its way out.
Oh, when did this happen?
It happened yesterday.
Just yesterday, okay,
Just
very
yesterday.
fresh. And right now, at least it didn't escalate.
No,
This submarine is leaving.
No, it's not a submarine. It's a Coast Guard. They call it the monster ship because it's the size of a frigate. So it's the largest. Yeah, it's the largest Coast Guard vessel, I think, in the world.
Yeah.
Right. So it's on its way out. No, there wasn't any untoward incident. There was no collision or dangerous maneuvers. No. So. We hope that it will leave soon.
And I guess the reason I got confused was you mentioned an underwater, was that a submarine that was associated with Russia?
No. I mentioned the Russian sub, which was the issue last December, if you remember.
Yeah.
There was this Russian submarine that that came out of the sea that we also monitored. And it was a friendly engagement with the Russian submarine, and then it left. And,
So there was no intentional intrusion in Philippine waters?
no, there wasn't. Yes.
What about an underwater drone found in Masbate?
Yes.
Is this related to China?
Yes, I think we're showing it right now. That's the underwater drone that we found in San Pascual. Some fishermen found it, and it was turned over to the Philippine Navy. The Philippine Navy is now conducting forensic examination of this specific unmanned drone. And I think it's too early for us to say if it's really Chinese, but we will really find out because it has markings. We can look at what's inside, what it's actually doing, what it recorded, because it's an unmanned drone. So as of now, we don't yet know the origin or the activities that it conducted, but hopefully very soon we'll be able to give more information.
You said there are markings. Were you able to see what characters are there? If it's English, Chinese, or Russian?
I'd like to share more information, but unfortunately, the investigation is ongoing,
so you're
and
not-
it's difficult to make a definitive conclusion. Baka sabihin ng Chinese embassy, masyado tayo mabilis But they haven't really spoken about it yet.
Earlier, with Secretary Sal Panelo, I also asked about calls to abolish the NTF-LCAC.
Yes.
Are there really calls to abolish NTF-LCAC?
From the usual suspects. No, from the left.
From the left. Okay, so there are talaga. And is there any chance that this would be abolished?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so because, as mentioned by Executive Director Jun Torres of the NTF-LCAC, really the game changer in ending the Communist Party of the Philippines, NPA, presence in the hinterlands has been the NTF-LCAC. No? From 89 guerrilla fronts 5 or 6 years ago, we ended the year with one weekend guerrilla front in Bicol. So,
So based on the track record, it has been effective
yes,
in ending communism and
the armed struggle.
the
Yes.
armed struggle, yes.
That's right. I think everybody knows that. No, you go around the country, traditional CPP, NPA layers or areas where they control are no longer under the control. Like if you go to Quezon, Bondok Peninsula, a few years back, people are afraid of going there. Now it's completely cleared of CPP, NPA. Even in Bicol, and I think the number one indication that we have been successful is that the New People's Army celebrated its anniversary, 5 decades, 55th anniversary if I'm not mistaken, last December 26, and no attacks were made on government forces or anywhere.
Okay, that's great to hear. Are there programs to reintegrate people who used to be NPAs or those who were recruited, especially the younger generations that were
Yes.
recruited? Are they now able to integrate back into society and find jobs?
Yes, we have the ECLIP program, the Integrated Community Local Integration Program. And this ECLIP program means that if you surrender to government forces and you provide and surrender your firearms to government, there is firearms remuneration, there's livelihood assistance, and there are many other things that we give you. And there's also the amnesty program. Last year, Congress passed the proclamation. The Congress concurred in the proclamation made by the President, providing amnesty to all insurgent groups, including the NPA, the RPA, and they can now submit all applications in national amnesty boards, which has been created under the National Amnesty Commission.
Okay. And how would you assess Bayan Muna's claim that there's an alleged fracture in the security sector of our country?
Yes, I think the statement was made yesterday by Congresswoman Castro and Congressman Raul Manuel. They were saying that the removal of Vice President Duterte in the National Security Council is indicative of a rift in the security sector, and I find that stretching or overthinking, stretching the argument too far, because we monitor constantly the security sector, the military, the Philippine National Police, and they are all professionals. No, they're all loyal to the Constitution and to the hierarchy of the armed forces of the Philippines. And if there are people from the security sector who are making statements, these are mostly from the retired, and they're retired. And as retired officials, they have the right to express their opinions. But insofar as the current members of the armed forces of the Philippine National Police, you cannot find any single individual who has expressed support for these types of rifts, no, within the security sector.
Would you say that the military, armed forces, they remain to be apolitical?
Yes, yes, that's what I'm saying. Really, the apolitical. They understand that these political dynamics are part and parcel of a democratic society, no, and they understand that they play a critical role in the stability of the country. You know?
And the Philippine Army celebrated their 89th anniversary last year.
Yes.
And
yes.
they also, based on a survey, enjoyed one of the highest approval ratings or trust ratings
Yes.
in the government. Do you think that this high approval rating and trust rating is a factor as well for them not to be involved in any destabilization plots or any, as you could say, like participation in the political rift that we're seeing right now in the country?
Yes, Attorney Karen, no? When that survey came out, we were very happy, you know, because the left would like to portray state security forces as human rights violators, as red taggers, no? You would hear that constantly from their statements coming from Karapatan, coming from all of these groups that are part of the militant left. But when the Okta research came out, the survey came out, we're in 78%, no, trusted the Philippine Army, despite all of this black propaganda against government, you know. If you remember, Attorney Karen, last year or 2 years ago, there was this issue about Jed and Julina. These are two individuals who allege that they were abducted by the Philippine Army, no? And cases were filed against government. Government was being portrayed as stifling the freedom of environmental defenders, because allegedly these two individuals were environmental defenders. But despite all of this black propaganda, the Philippine Army got this 78% approval rating, and only 2% distrusted the Philippine Army. So for a net approval rating of 75%, that's really unprecedented, no?
Very high.
Yeah, that means the support of the public to the Philippine Army and the security sector is really high.
Okay. And lastly, when is the next meeting of the National Security Council, this new revamped NSC?
Last week, the NSA told me, NSA Anyo told me that we will now recommend to the President the convening of the Council utilizing the new composition. So let's expect that soon. Maybe this month or next month, there will be a meeting of the NSC.
Thank you so much, Undersecretary Jonathan Malaya. We appreciate your time today.
Thank you for inviting me to your show.
While the PBBM administration claims that the removal of Vice President Sara from the National Security Council is meant to stabilize and strategies and efforts for their national security, supporters of Vice President Sara and former President Rodrigo Duterte think that politics is written all over the decision. Amidst the controversies surrounding EO 81, the National Security Council must remain steadfast in its objective of protecting national security and sovereignty, and should prioritize the best interests of the Filipino people at all times. Be timely informed, be insightful of the news, always stay at the forefront. Join us again tomorrow for meaningful conversations that will help you form an objective personal opinion. This is Attorney Karen Jimeno. Thank you for spending your hour with us.